Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Learning Excel through a live project. So, in our previous episode, we learned about how to use the VLOOKUP, and in that VLOOKUP, we learned about how to use the if condition. In today's episode, we'll be learning a little more complex formulas like SUMIF, COUNTIF, SUMIFS, COUNTIFS, etc., which we'll be using to calculate the monthly expenses for each expense head as well as for each payment type which we have defined. Let us jump directly to the course. To start with our learning, let us start working with a sample data which I have already created. So let us just quickly go through our sample data. So this sample data is for a small company which is having 5 employees or sales executives who are providing their daily sales figures for 3 days. With this simple sample data, let us learn about one by one. You have already learned about two simple functions called count and sum. So let us just have a quick recap of it. So if I want to know the count of all the records, what I will do, I will say cu count and then I will select the range. So I selected the date and it has already shown 14 records. Since it's a simple set of data, you already know how many records are there. So you are easily able to find out that only 14 records are there. If there is a huge set of data, then you may need to use the count function. Let us see one small issue with the count. Now, for the date, I used the count function, so it has given the result as 14. Now, if I am doing the same function for the sales executive, let us see what happens. I say count, and now I select the same set of data. If you notice, it is giving only 0 because count will calculate the number of rows which are having a numeric value. We already learned that date is a numeric value and it is not a text figure or a string. Okay. So now how can you overcome this? You have another function called count A that will give you the list of rows or the range in which there is no empty value. So if I delete Mike here, so it will reduce. Okay. So similarly, I can use the count here very well because this is a numeric value. It gives a value. Similarly, let us see how a sum works. Let me delete it to make it so simple. I say sum. So if I calculate the sum for this date, yeah, it will work, but it will give a huge value which is irrelevant. So we are not going to use this. So we can use a sum for the amount column. I can give the amount. I can get the sum of amount. No issues. Now, there is a small question coming to our picture. I want to know how many times one particular employee has reported their sales figure. So if you noticed, if you look at Mike, Mike has reported on 3rd. Let me just highlight it. On 2nd, he has not reported it. On 3rd, he has reported it. Whereas if you look at John, John has reported it on 1st and on 2nd and on 3rd. So in the large set of data, if you want to know how many times one person has reported, you may need to use a slightly different formula that is called count if. Let's see how we will use the count if. Let us assume I want to figure out how many days John has reported and how many days Mike has reported. Okay, so this is the two problems for which I need to find a solution. I will be using a formula called COUNTIF, and if you go there, it has two parameters. One is the range, another one is the criteria. So let me select the range because I need to find how many times John has reported. So let me select the range as C2 to C15 and give the criteria in within quotation. Let me give John. And if you see, John has reported 3 times. If I use the same formula for Mike, COUNTIF, and select the range as the same and say Mike, it gives a value as 2. So this is a formula called COUNTIF. In the similar way, can I find what is the total sales done by John and Mike? Yes, we can. For that, we'll be using another formula called SUMIF. Okay, so let me just copy the same thing here. Yep, the problem. Okay, and call it as what is sales done by John. So this is the problem for which I want to identify the solution. So I'll be using a formula called SUMIF and same thing with slightly different set of parameters. So I will be using the same range. The first, I'm going to select the name of the person and then I give the criteria. The criteria here is John, and then I'm going to give the range for which I need to find the sum. So if I look at it, it is $1,120 is what is the total sales done by John. Similar way, if I find the same thing for Mike, SUMIF, range is the same thing. I'm selecting the range which I'm going to implement the condition, and I say Mike. I can give capital letter or small letter, that doesn't matter. And let me select the sum range and it gives $260. So he has done $10 here and $250 here. So together he made $260 as his total sales. So I think we are clear about these two formulas, COUNTIF and SUMIF. If you look at this formula, we are giving the condition as John as a hard coded value. What if I want it to be changed according to a parameter which is defined in another cell? Okay, so let us do this way. I have these 5 employees: John, Jack, Mark, Victor, and Mike. I want to figure out for each person what is how many number of times he has reported and how many number of times what and what is the total sales he has done. Okay, so number of times reported and total sales. This is what I want to figure out. Okay, let me just. So how do I do that? Here I will be using the COUNTIF formula. So I will use COUNTIF, and then the range. I don't have any change. I'll be selecting all these things. But for criteria, instead of using a hard-coded value within a double quote, I will simply select this name here. It gives the value. So I can copy the same thing. Let me just highlight it. Okay. I can simply copy and paste it here. And we very well know what will happen if I do like this. So if I press F2, you know that it is a relative reference. So it will start from one row below in your range. So we need to implement an absolute reference. I want everything to be started from second row and I want to enter it at 15th row. Now if I copy this and drag it up to here, for everyone, whatever is the number of sales he has reported, that is given here as an answer. Okay, so we know very well that everybody else has done 3 times reporting except Mike, who has done only 2 times reporting. Now, in the same way, we can use the formula for SUMIF also. So I will do again SUMIF, and I will select the range, same thing. Okay, and we learned the lesson that it should be absolute reference. So I make it as $C 15, and then the criteria, as we have done before, I'm selecting H8, which is John, and then I'm selecting the sum range. Once again, we need to ensure that it is having an absolute reference for the row. Now I close this. Now it has calculated, and I can drag it here up to below, and everybody's sales is coming. Let us validate whether it is correct. So this is sum of all the times reported, that is 14 times. So we know very well that it is 14 times. We'll check here also. And the total sales here is 3685. So that also will let us validate here. So here we know very well that it is 14 records. Then also let us count equal to, as we learned earlier, count A of from here to here. So that is 14. And here we will say sum, and it is 3685. So we have learned about how to use COUNTIF and SUMIF, and we also learned about what is the difference between count and count A. Now let us learn the next thing. We learned about how to use COUNTIF and how to use SUMIF. With this data, now my boss is asking me few questions which I need to answer. So the questions he has asked are these three. So he wants to know what is the sales done on 1st July 2024 by Jack. And then he want to know how much sales Jack did till 2nd of July 24. And he also wants to know how many sales figures received from Mike till 2nd July 24. How do I do it? We cannot use a simple COUNTIF, or we cannot use a SUMIF. So here is where the two formulas are coming, called COUNTIF S and SUMIF S. So see, the thing is, in principle, both these formulas work similar to COUNTIF and SUMIF, but the only advantage is that you can use multiple criterias rather than one criteria. So let us start with a simple count first. So which is his third question. So he wants to know how many sales figures received from Mike till 2nd July 24. So here I will be using the formula for count if yes. So if I look at it, it is asking for the first parameter is criteria, and the second parameter is range. Then again it can ask for criteria 1 and range 1, range 2, like that it will go. Okay, so first let me select what is the criteria which I am going to do. I can select any one. So I select this column. Okay, and then I select the criteria is I want to figure it for Mike. So I call it as Mike. Okay, I'm hard coding it. Similar to what we have done earlier, you can refer it from another cell also. So then the first criteria is that I want to find the total number of sales figure received from Mike. That criteria I put. Now I need to figure out the date criteria. So let me select the date, and my condition is that on or before 2nd of July 2024. So I can put a less than or equal to comment and say that 2nd July 24 and close it with double quote. Now if I close, he has done only one because on second he has not provided anything. Let me just do a filter here and validate our answer, and I say it is Mike. Mike is done on first, and then he has done only on third. So with the COUNTIF, we can evaluate based on multiple criteria. Okay. Now let us go to the first question he has asked. So he has asked, let me just expand it so that we can understand it better. What is the sales done on 1st of July by Jack? So similar to how we have used the COUNTIF, let us use something called SUMIFS and say what is the sum range. So we need to find the total sales. So it is the amount value. Then we will select what is the criteria range. We need to find for Jack. So let us select name as Jack and then say it is for Jack. So give the criteria as Jack, and then we need to find only on this date. So let us select the date as the criteria range and give the because we are going to find it for only one date. So it is 1st of July 2024. Done. So he has done $250. So Jack has done $250 here. Okay. So similar way, same thing, but we want to know what he has done till 2nd of July 2024. So we learned it in the COUNTIF how to use the date criteria with less than symbol. Same thing we'll use it for SUMIF formula. SUMIFS. The sum range is the amount once again. And then next, I will select the criteria range. The criteria range is for, we need to use it for Jack. So let me select Jack. And then the next criteria is that on which date. I mean, before, on or before 2nd of July. So let us select this range, comma, and we will use a less than or equal to 2nd July 24 and close the double quote and figure it. So $550 is what he has done till 2nd of July 2024. Let us evaluate it. So we have Jack here. Let us select only Jack. And here, if you see these two, he has done $550. So let me remove this filter. What is the answer we have received? It is $550. So you have a fair idea about how to use the COUNTIF, the SUMIF, the COUNTIF S, as well as SUMIF S. We need to figure out how we will implement it in our expense tracking application. For that, let me open our finished expense tracking application. If you go here, we have the expense tracker. We have done it for every day. And here in the expense head, we have column called January, February, March, April. And we are arriving at how much expense we have done on the month of January. But here in the expense tracker, we have only date. Here we need to find it for a month. So it is not a straightforward. We cannot use the month well. We can use, but we don't want to get it more complicated. So we will be using a simple shortcut to figure out to extract only the month and year from the date value. I will show you. I have given a hidden column within between B and C. It gives only the year number and the month number, and with this we will be trying to calculate the monthly total expense using the sum if s formula. Let us learn about it in our next episode by first learning how to play with the date value, and then we will learn how to implement the sum if s formula inside our expense tracker. See you tomorrow with a new episode in which we'll be learning more about how to play with the date and how to work with simple string related functions, and then we will learn how to implement what we have learned today, the SUMIFS and COUNTIFS formula inside our expense tracker with a simple shortcut of implementing year number and the month number to calculate the expense per month. Thank you. Thanks for watching.